Hi guys, welcome back, and this time around I'm bringing you the Letshuoer DX1. This is one of the latest IEMs from Letshuoer, a single DD that kind of replaces the D13, launched I believe now 3 years ago. Anyway, I've had this IEM for a couple of weeks. I've been listening to it on and off. Been comparing it with other single DDs, with some hybrids, with some tribrids, although the majority of the comparisons I've kept it to single DDs, and that's just I mean, it's just something that I like doing, comparing IEMs with similar configurations. Anyway, what is special about the DX1? The DX1 has an 11mm aluminum magnesium alloy diaphragm driver, which apparently has been developed in-house, and so it is one of the one of those drivers that is a little bit more fancy than the usual titanium or DLC or CNT that you see more commonly being used, kind of almost off the shelf, those drivers, while this one is a more unique driver. Anyway, this is the sleeve that comes in the box. It's got some information in the back of relevance. I guess the 30 ohm impedance is worthwhile mentioning, and the 108 dB sensitivity. I didn't find the DX1 particularly hard to drive. I will say, however, that the DX1, and I'll get to that in a second, is very much, at least with me, was a little bit picky with regards to how it fit in my ear. Anyway, as for the rest of the accessories, plenty of tips, nothing to be said there. Honestly, in that aspect, Letshuoer never disappoints. The case is also a newer, well, at least a newer case that I've seen from them, which is this mix of kind of an alloy body with a rubberized lid. The tips inside there are the usual Letshuoer tips that are included with the IEMs that Letshuoer usually provides, and they worked quite well with the DX1. However, what I did find was there was a slight tendency of them breaking seal, and that was mainly because of a fitment issue with my ears. I mean, for some reason, I usually don't have many problems with that aspect, but the DX1 in this particular case, it just I don't know, it just didn't want to fit me properly, I guess. Obviously, this is not the stock cable. Okay, let's make that clear. I didn't dislike the standard cable, but I just thought that this cable here from IVPIQ just was a nice alternative. As for the IEM itself, it's a beautifully built metal shell. I get the impression that the back is somehow open backed or something of the sort. Nothing really that can be called negative in terms of the overall build or anything of the sort. Fixed nozzles, so no exchangeable or interchangeable nozzles. And I guess because of the shape of the IEM being kind of like this almost bullet style, that was the reason why I was having some difficulty, because the angle that the nozzle was making with the body wasn't exactly being the ideal in my case, and so I ended up having to kind of fit them in a, let's say, less than ideal position in my ears, and also use these KB Euro7s, which worked very well. They were actually the tips that ended up maintaining that seal the best. The other detail or the other thing that I think is worth mentioning as well with regards to the DX1, it's that I found that the deeper I would fit the IEM, the more coherent and balanced the sound would be, while if I just kind of had it sitting at, let's say, the entrance of my ear canal, the overall tendency was for the sound to become excessively thin. When I show you the graph in a couple of minutes, you'll understand what I'm meaning, or what I'm trying to say by it. But anyway, that aside, and let's get straight into it, because that's what you want to know. The DX1. What is the DX1? The DX1 is a more polished alternative to the D13, which I've got over here, the D13, and I've also brought out not as overall, let's say, comparisons, but these three other single DDs, or some of my favorite single DDs, which, well, for the exception of the MIM Dark Magician, they kind of have a similar price to the DX1, and I'm talking about the Heidi's, the MK12, the Turi. I'm talking about the FD15 from Fire, and then of course the MIM, the Dark Magician. With regards to the sound, and going straight into it, like I was saying, the sound of the DX1 is a sound which, compared to the D13, has tried to make itself more mature by being more vocal focused. In terms of the overall detail that you get from the DX1, it's actually nothing short of pretty impressive. However, and like I mentioned, if that fitment in your ear isn't exactly the ideal, then I found that it became excessively thin. Why? Because the way that the bass is tuned, it's a gliding style of bass that doesn't really have much energy, and I would say that between about 100 hertz and 1K, it's almost flat, almost neutral, and then with only a very slight gain below that 100 hertz, and a very slight gain above 1K in the pinna gain area. So it's a kind of a very neutralish overall tune, which makes it sound extremely detailed, very open in terms of that. Of that ability to go and fetch, the vocals and all the details that are present in the vocals, and details present in with certain instruments. But if the fit isn't exactly the ideal, it can lack a little bit of weight, with certain genres. Without, it just kind of seems that the songs are overly thin because they don't have that mid bass slam that would be perhaps sometimes the ideal, or at least for me the ideal. And the way I found to work around that was actually by fitting it deeper. And by fitting it deeper, you got obviously a better bass seal, and by getting that better bass seal, not only did you notice then that the bass that the DX1 is giving us is a bass which is definitely more sub bass focused, so it's a bass performance that it's in the lower registers where it gets to the, let's say, the meat and potatoes of its presentation, but it's so well mannered that it with that deep fit is capable of then bringing out that mid bass that is sometimes lacking when the IM is not, at least in my ears, fitted as deep as it should be. Overall, like I was saying, there's really not much more that I can call as a criticism or call as an attention to that might be a negative aspect. It's an IM that definitely, compared to the D13, it's a big improvement. I mean, the stock D13 was an IM that, yes, it did have a very nice bass performance, but the way that the mids were done was perhaps a little bit overly forward. Maybe the driver's quality wasn't the ideal, and so it kind of showed a little bit of a lack of polish, let's put it that way. However, if you were capable of retuning it like I did on this one here, and it's not a difficult retune to do, mind you, it does become a really impressive IM. And actually, the retuned D13 here compared to the DX1, let me put it to you this way: the retuned D13 has a more satisfying bass performance than the stock DX1, while the DX1 has a little bit more extension and clarity up top than the retuned D13. But overall, I would say that both of them are very good complements to each other. Retuned D13, mind you, retuned D13, not the stock D13. As for the stock D13 compared to the DX1, I would still prefer the DX1, even with the fact that, yes, on the D13 you do have the exchangeable nozzles. Yes, on the D13 you do have a little bit more mid-bass capability. Yes, although the shell is somewhat similar, the angle that the shell has, and if you look here carefully, let me actually get the same IM from the same side, exactly right side. Okay, if you look carefully at the body and the angle that the nozzle makes, you can see that the angle that's made on the D13 is more pronounced, and by being more pronounced, it actually is capable of fitting easier and more securely in the ear. So yes, it does have that advantage over the DX1. It does have a better bass over the DX1, better bass in terms of being more satisfying, but it's not as polished. It's not as a mature tuned IM as the DX1, and the DX1 obviously is a better IM. Comparing very briefly, like I said, because I don't want it to come across as a comparison, but just for you guys to kind of understand where the DX1 sits. The MK12, excuse me, from Haides, the Turi, I think is a bit of a hidden gem, a really impressive IM, capable of two different types of tuning, depending on which nozzle you're using. Either a more detailed warm tuning, or then a little bit more less detailed but more old school tuning, and let's put it that way. And what I mean is that with the silver nozzle you get a little bit more emphasis on the mids and upper mids. With the red nozzle you get less less that detail at, let's say, lower and mid volumes. But once you crank up the volume, the MK12 really comes alive, and that's where the MK12, I think, especially with the red nozzle, really impresses. It's that it plays loud, clean, very balanced. I would even dare say that playing at louder volumes, obviously with all the care that should be taken if you're going to be doing that, the MK12 is a better IM than the DX1. The DX1, it scales well, it plays well even at louder volumes, but I found, at least for me, that the DX1 at louder volumes kind of seemed that it was a little bit not on the limit, but it sounded a little bit edgy at times, while the MK12 didn't have any of those issues. I would say they are both complementary to each other rather than one is superior than the other. I would say that they fill out different niches. Okay. FD15 from FIO, I would basically say the same thing as I just said about the MK12. Absolutely impressive IM that I think, I don't know, maybe it hasn't gotten the deserved attention that it should be getting. It is truly one of the nicest IMs I've heard from FIO, and a tremendous performer. As for the MIM Dark Magician, I mean, so much has been said about it that I'm not really gonna extend myself too much. I will say that in terms of the bass performance, yes, that the MIM Dark Magician, even though it has been tuned in a manner which is less pronounced than would be the ideal, or what the graph would lead you to believe, it's got loads of bass and clean, detailed, dynamic, nothing there. But in the upper registers, I find that the DX1 is just a better overall performer. I think, to be honest, irrespective of all the hype that's been made about the MIM Dark Magician, and it's to a certain extent deserved, the reality is this: I think the MIM Dark Magician, from its initial price of just over $300, where it should have maintained itself to justify it having gone up to as close to $600 at one point, it doesn't, however good it is, it's not an IM that in any way justifies that price when compared to something like the DX11. Again, complementary IMs to each other. They focus on any one of these three are complementary IMs to the DX1. That's the reality. But the DX1, it's proof that the quality of the overall IMs and the performance of the overall, that can be gotten from IMs today has really become quite significant. And the proof of that is exactly this. I mean, the MK12, the FD15, and the DX1 IMs all costing around the $140 to $160, $70 price bracket, and they are all performing, way above what would be expected. I mean, they are performing on the level of something like the MIM Dark Magician, in my opinion, in many cases, and even superior to the MIM Dark Magician. Anyway, let me just quickly show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay guys, so here are the graphs. I'm starting off with the graph for D13 so that I can immediately compare it with the DX1 and you guys can see the difference that one and the other have. So the DX1 is the graph that I've now placed, which is the green line. Definitely you can see that actually let me take away quickly the D13. You can definitely see it's a very neutral-ish type of tuned IEM, no emphasis in any particular part of the spectrum. A very relaxed pinna gain with a gain in the pinna of roughly 5.5 dBs. The bass below 100, it slowly rises, giving it a little bit of a sub bass focus, but it's a very, I like calling this type of tuning very suave. It's very non-obtrusive. It doesn't bug you, nothing. Very now it will be very much, at least for me, it will be very much dependent on how it fits your ears. Okay. In my case, if I don't get that slightly deeper fit, then this area of the spectrum here between the 60 and 300 can sound overly thin and be somewhat overpowered by the amount of detail that this part here of the mids, upper mids and treble are capable of generating. So by getting that deeper fit, then yes, as compared to the D13. The D13, yes, did have a more mid-bass tuned into it, although it was also not excessive, okay, but it was more noticeable. But it was that balance that maybe was struck between the bass and then the mids, or that kind of just made the IM feel a little bit shouty, and it especially when you started raising the volume on the D13, it kind of shouted. That's why then, let me just take it away quickly here, I retuned the D13 to the one that is over there, and I got this tuning, which is a very nice tune. Let me put it to you this way. I mean, compared to the DX1, which I'm going to put now, they are very identical. So I've basically made the D13 have the sort of mids, upper mids and treble that the DX1 has, although it's not entirely true, because the DX1 is capable of more detail, although tuned in the same manner. It's capable of more detail, and this is by virtue of the diaphragm and of the driver that's being used. It's a much more quality driver. But yes, you do notice that the D13, and also by virtue of it being a 13mm driver, not an 11mm driver, has got a little bit more bass present, especially in the mid-bass impact. However, having said all of this, the truth is this: the DX1 is a very nicely tuned IM. It's a mature tune for people that know what they want, and it's for people that are appreciative of this, of a, let's put it, a proper sounding IM with no unnecessary coloration, if that is what rocks your boat. As a quick comparison here, let me just quickly show you, compared to my MIM Dark Magician. Okay, my MIM Dark Magician, yes, does have more bass without a question, but the upper mids, upper mids and treble, although they seem similar, they don't have the same cleanliness, the same detail as the ones on the DX1. So that's that. The FD15 is this one here. Again, a very similar style tuned IM to the DX1. Bass and mids, I would say the FD15 may be a little bit more satisfying, but the detail up top on the upper mids and treble of the DX1 is absolutely phenomenal. So they win there, and that's why I said again that they are complements to each other. And then finally, the where is it? I'm trying to find you here. Oh yes, the MK12, and this is the MK12 with let me put it in red. This is the MK12 with the red nozzle, which is what I think is the more differentiating nozzle of the MK12, which you would think by looking at it that it's overly thick in terms of the mid bass compared into the rest of the spectrum. And yes, maybe at lower volumes it can sound overly warm, but the reality is the MK12, when you start pushing the volume, it really comes alive and it really shines, and it's a real pleasure to listen to. And that again is the main reason why I said that it's a compliment to the DX1, and that's the truth. Be it the MK12 from High Diz, be it the FD15 from FIO, be it the MIM Dark Magician, these are IMs which are more complements to the DX1 than necessarily better than the DX1. Okay. And that's basically it, guys. I don't think there's really much more that I can say about the DX1. If you have the opportunity to listen to it, I would say have a listen, so that you don't make a rushed or a purchase that's based on just on what I'm saying. Have a listen. There's nothing better than that. And if then, yes, it does tick all the right boxes, then you can afford it, then go for it. Why not? All right, guys, as always, like and subscribe. If there's anything that you want to ask me, I'll do my very best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you. Take care now. Bye-bye.